my way. But here I am again. And I'm really inspired to talk about sex. And I think I kind of want to unpack this maybe in a couple different videos. But first, I kind of just wanted to talk about how our lives can be driven by our sexual desires and we don't even know it, you know? I think on a conscious level, we know that it's an innate drive to want to be sexually active, you know? It's the life driving force, you know? But it gets deeper than that when we're using it for other things. Like we're using sex for validation, or we're using sex for filling empty voids. I mean, that's kind of what the validation thing is too, to numb us, to distract us, you know. But sex can be turned into a vice in a way, you know, if we're not careful. And I'm just looking at my own journey because I don't remember exactly when it happened, when I felt like I was using sex as a way to fill voids. I was pretty sure that it was happening after my divorce. I definitely used it probably in my 20s. I recognized in my 20s that I think I've always recognized that honestly, I wanted sex to be a deeper thing, a deeper practice for me. It's felt like a very spiritual thing, and I wanted it to be shared on a spiritual level with somebody. That has always been what I truly wanted it to be for. But I realized the endorphins and the high that I got off of it, and how I felt wanted, needed, desired, and what that did for my ego, you know? But only for a short time, and then there were consequences. uh, Sex it comes with a hefty price, man. A hefty price. But I would say it got worse after my divorce. And I was dealing with grief and was just really trying to numb myself of this whole big venture that I had put myself on. I was supplementing, let's put it this way, I was supplementing, I need get something to take the edge off, because I was completely transforming my life, uprooting myself. I mean, I left my hometown, left my job, left my marriage, had some pretty hefty shit. And sex was a great distraction. It was a great, for I wouldn't call it, great, but honestly, it was one of the things I used to take the edge off. And I was honestly looking for the next best thing in a mate, and I was using sex as kind of the bait to catch somebody, but it wasn't the right bait, you know. But I didn't have the fulfillment within myself, the peace, the patience, and all that within myself to, really be able to form a deep, stable connection with another person in that way, because of the state that I was in. And using sex did not help, because all it did was traumatize me. It traumatized me. It traumatized the other person, you know. in some shape, form, or fashion, you know. I had went out on a date with this man, and this was after my divorce, when I was definitely using sex as a numbing agent. Or not, yeah, numbing agent, a distraction, my drug. And went on a date with him. Well, actually, I drove to him. I drove because he was in a different city, not far from me, maybe an hour and a half drive. Older man, older than me. We had talked on the phone for quite some time. FaceTimed, really nice person. Went to his house. Now, I don't know how many women would do something like this, or if that was a smart thing to do, but to be honest, I would do things like that all the time. Okay? All the time. And it was a really good time. We ate. He bought some good food. We ate. His friend came over, which again would seem like some really sketchy shit. But his friend came over. We all ate and drank and smoked. It was a really good vibe. And by the end of the night, he did not try to sleep with me, and that turned me off. It completely turned me off. I was highly triggered at that time anyway. Again, when you're not whole within yourself, you're not stable within yourself, you're volatile as AF, ticking time bomb. And that turned me off. And when he connected with me after that day, because I left abruptly that morning, and he wanted to spend some more time with me that day. Like, I spent the night. He wanted to, maybe the next day we eat breakfast, we hang out, get to know each other a bit more, right? Well, I was pissed. How dare he not, try to have sex with me. And I broke it off with him. But then I tried to reconnect with him because I realized that he was trying to form a deeper connection with me. And I started to see beyond, I was really doing a lot of inner work around that time. And I was starting to understand that I needed to have a different practice. I needed to surround myself with different kinds of people. But I've always thought that birds of a feather flock together, and I knew that I was attracting certain people because of who I was. And so I was shifting, and I wanted to be around people that reflected who I wanted to be, and he was one of those people. And he, intelligently declined my request, which I think he's an extremely smart man, because when I was trying to reconnect with him, I still wasn't right. But I wanted to absorb some of his good energy, right? And it took me quite some time. I feel like I'm finally at a place where I don't view sex as something I need. And maybe because of my age, I'll be 40 in a couple months, and I just look at it totally differently, and it feels so freeing to be out of that bondage of sex. I was saying that over the last couple years, I would go through spurts of celibacy because I knew that I was using it to cope. It was one of the things I was using to cope, one of the things I was using to get validation, I struggle. I would say within recent years, I really admitted to myself, because this is another thing, we don't admit things to ourselves. So how can we work on them? But I was admitting to myself that I had low self-esteem, in particularly in the area of my physical appearance. So I had to really address that within myself as well, because I felt like, well, at least I can be sexy. At least I can be sexy. At least I can be sweet and, fun. So sex was definitely a tool for me to try to get what I wanted out of somebody else, and just uncovering these things. But I would say I'm finally at a point, because I had to go through bouts of celibacy just to not get myself in big trouble, get myself into bad relationships and things like that. But I think finally I'm at a place where I don't look at sex as a necessity. I think, being in a romantic relationship, it is, a tool of intimacy, a tool for intimacy. And I think that it could be great, when expressed within a relationship, a loving relationship. But I feel that, even then, how do you view it? I think sometimes, especially men, in relationships, they put so much emphasis on sex as something they need, but do you really need it? I think that it is a luxury, right? A luxury item. It's great to have, but do you need it? I think that's the question. And I think I'm finally to a point where I'm like, it's not a necessity at this point. Now, maybe like in my 20s, when I was young and I was still looking for a mate, or dare I say, my body was pushing me to reproduce, then okay, it may. I mean, I went to college for biology, so I feel that some things are innate and it's a natural part of the rhythm of life. So even sex, I would say at a certain part of our lives is something that we can't repress. We can. I mean, you can repress it, but I feel like if it's calling you, sometimes you have to answer that call. It's a part of the journey, right? But I feel like at this stage of my life, that's my mom. I'll call her back. But I feel like at this stage in my life, it's not a necessity, It's a novelty item. And it feels so freeing to transcend that. And I think the only way to transcend that kind of energy, that is such a strong drive, I think the only way to transcend that kind of energy, honestly, is to be okay with yourself, Just completely be okay with you. Show appreciation for your life. Have gratitude for your life. And not feel like you need so many things to make you whole. When you feel more whole, you don't go out there pursuing things that really may not be, that may be more cost to you than gain, and sex can be one of those things. It's a big cost. It's a big price to your physical, mental health, to your, spiritual. It's way deeper than we like to admit. So I think that in my life, I am respectful of my sexual energy. and I don't need it to feel some sort of void, or I don't have that need to pursue it. I'm not trying to have any children. you know, I and it just feels amazing. It feels amazing. And I think that you have to just know where you're at in your life. If you're feeling a big push, especially if you're young, you know, for a young person, it's kind of hard to view sex in a healthy way, especially in our day and age of society. It's everywhere. I think as a young person, if I would have respected my deep inner knowing that sex should be a spiritual practice between two people, that I would have chosen my partners more wisely, you know? And I think it would have colored my experience in a different way. I also feel that if I would have acknowledged that I was dealing with self-esteem issues, that I probably wouldn't have used sex as a tool to feel wanted or whatever. So it's a thing. I think we just abuse it. We abuse sex, and it's a cost to it, you know. But it's just something that's been on my mind because I have been feeling a bit more free from it. And that's remarkable because it's been something that I've been fighting for the last couple years. And I think once I realized that I already had everything that I needed, I didn't need to use sex to get what I need, you know? I think even just letting go of the need or want to have somebody else in my life to fulfill me. And it's crazy because I am in relationship with a wonderful man, a beautiful spirit. But I think even being in a relationship with him makes me realize that I'm whole no matter I'm with him or not. And I didn't feel like that before. So that didn't help, you know, with my journey to try not to use sex as a coping mechanism, because I still felt like a piece was missing. You know, so that's usually the start. But sex is a hell of a drug. It could be a hell of a drug for some of us. It could definitely be almost a form of an addiction. I know men deal with this, and women do too. I'm speaking on my experience, but I know men deal with it a lot. And I know, again, like I said, I'm a biology, kind of minded person. And I know a lot of it is biological for men to have that drive to want to go hunt and prey. But at some point, you can overdo it. And at some point, you may, as a man, realize that you're using sex to fill some kind of void, to, stroke your ego, to validate you. And to me, that's when it becomes dangerous. So I think we all have to ask the question, what are we using sex for? And why? And being honest with ourselves and being brave enough to really unpack that, to not abuse it, because it's a beautiful thing. Sex is a beautiful thing. It's how we create other life forms. It's a beautiful thing. But just with anything, you overdo it, it could become, something that hinders us, so just food for thought. Feels good to check in with YouTube again. What are your thoughts around this topic? Have you ever felt that you abused sex in your lifetime? And if so, if you're brave enough why that was the case? Or have you just been more disciplined with sex? Maybe that wasn't one of your vices. Maybe it wasn't something, you know, that you wanted to abuse. Maybe you respected sex and respected your body, and if so, what do you think that was from? That would be very interesting to hear. But I'm gonna go. It's been pretty loud in the background, but it's been nice to sit out here and chat. Until next time, my friends. Bye.